Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. I'm Preacher Boss, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. Hope that you're having a tremendous Wednesday. We know that it's hump day and we are into that downward slide heading to, you got it, Christmas. So, all you Muslims out there that have not completed your Christmas shopping, you don't have a whole lot of time left. Before you wind up trying to get your stuff from Walgreens or the gas station, make sure that you get your gifts for Christmas, Muslims, and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and whatever else you're trying to celebrate. That's from your Uncle Preach. So I hope you're doing well, brothers and sisters. I want to welcome everybody back to the show. Yesterday, we had quite a show, a bit of a celebration, just a celebration of gratitude, friendship, fellowship. We had people coming on. Thanks everybody that came on for the show and everybody that called yesterday to make sure that the old man had a happy 55th birthday. I appreciate you, man. Allah continue to guide you and reward you. So we're switching gears today. We're switching up gears today, brothers and sisters. I had held on to this topic that we're going to be talking about for a while. I held on to it. When I say I held on to it, what I mean by that is the fact that I didn't cover it last week because I felt like I had to do some homework. Not so much homework, but a little bit of soul searching. There was an aspect, if you will, whereby I felt as though I had to kind of go back and look at historical narrative and not be one, judgmental, and two, not be rushing to judgment about these things, but literally having to look at the flow. And when I say look at the flow, what I'm talking about is the scope of liberation movements in the United States. Black people, Latinos, Muslims, gays, lesbians, anybody who felt like they wanted to get themselves up from under the boot of the oppressor has gone through these things. Now, everyone knows here, if you don't know, that the blueprint for getting out of oppression here in the United States, moving out of slavery, is, of course, the diaspora, the aspect of Africans being brought over here forcefully to be slaves and forced labor, if you will. But then something happens, brothers and sisters, and it's nothing short of a miracle. It's the fact that people re-identify and reimagine themselves outside of the scope of an oppression. They say to themselves that I have rights. Not that I don't have rights, but I have agency, I have presence, I have purpose for the space I'm being in. And that purpose is not directly tied to you in terms of service to you or your government or your ideas. More and more, brothers and sisters, we are beginning to see an attack on those ideals. We're seeing more of a very, very myopic, a very, very skewed view of who matters here in the United States. And once you get to the space of talking about who matters here in the United States, it becomes who's number one. It becomes who's better. I always say that the devil's two cruelest tricks was number one, getting a man, a human being, to believe he was better than somebody else. And number two, he had more time. This, brothers and sisters, is nothing short of a catastrophe. We live in a society that has perplexed me since I was a kid. That a society that claims to have truth, justice, the American way, at a very young age as a child, probably the same as many of you, I looked at America and I said, this is a country that's filled up with a lot of people that not only are hateful, but a lot of people who are miserable. You can work through hate, but it's hard to work through miserable. And the way that people somehow get away from this misery is projecting it onto other people. Now, in slavery, you can do that because society allowed you to do that. But as laws matriculated, you couldn't do that. So the idea becomes, let me affect the way that you live. Let me affect your quality of life, not just for you or your wife or your family, but also your kids. Let me fundamentally take the things and gut the institutions and give them to you where they have no meaning, no purpose, no bite, and somehow tell you that, what are you talking about? You have the same rights as everyone else. You don't have the same rights as everyone else. And as we get into this subject today, brothers and sisters, I am going to ask some very institutional questions about what is liberation if someone can snatch it from you. When I say snatch it from me, I don't mean in wars. We don't do wars anymore, brothers and sisters. It's done by laws. It's done by statutes. It's done by local boards, if you will, pretending pretending to err in the best interest of their constituents. They do not. We're in the middle of a pandemic, and guess what, brothers and sisters? It's a war not between the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. It's a war between those who have proper information and those who seek to give you disinformation. In this space, for the next couple minutes, brothers and sisters, we're going to talk about something that's actually running through the Muslim community. I talked about it last year. I talked about Muslims in blackface. If you want to go look that up, you can. But something happened recently, and I'm going to talk about it because even now, brothers and sisters, the problem was not eradicated. It was not blown up. It was not thoroughly investigated. We let a rat who ratted on this community walk. We let a rat who informed our enemies walk. I'm going to tell you why he walked. And I'm going to tell you the way things should be and the way things actually are. Here on the ShOUt Show. Stick with us. We'll be right back in a minute. ShOUt Show, Preacher Boss. Satana, let's get started. We're back. Before we get started, brothers and sisters, again, like I said, I want to thank everybody that tuned in for the show yesterday. What is the show? What is the ShOUt Show without giving shout out people, giving shout outs to your ShOUt family and ShOUt soldiers? It's a pretty bad show. I always say that while I'm the host of the show, I don't own the platform. The people who come on the platform, they're the ones who make the show. This is a relationship show. So when people come on and you may see me ask them, how's your parents? How's your wife? How are your children, brothers and sisters? It's because generally this is the way conversation happens. It's not fake. It's not phony. This is the way we get out. That's all I want to say. So before we get into the meat of our discussion today, let's go ahead and get some people here on the ShOUt Show. First up, we're going to give a shout out to our resident dietitian, dietary director, craft services. That would be Sister Ree. How you doing, Sister Ree? We appreciate you as always. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Peace and blessings to you, Derek, and Juan as well. We hope that you're feeling better. I'm keeping an eye out. Mom is telling me some things. We need to talk. All right, next up, Brother Altaf Rashid, my main man. It's 6 o'clock from all the way from Toronto. The brother's always on time. And he's also our Canadian ambassador to the show. Make sure the quality of the show is good on this side of the border and that side of the border too. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Brother Altaf, man, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for making it to the show. Next up, I know it's Eric, but I'm from DC. Eric. I'm gonna give a wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother Eric. Thank you so much for coming to the show. Appreciate you, man. Thank you for tuning in. This should be a barn burner. I hope everybody has an open mind. Feel free, brothers and sisters, to jump in because it's going to be some historical narrative. All of us are going to be able to identify. That's what I'm thinking. And we're going to make this just a thinking show. We're going to make it a thinking show. All right. Thanks for joining us, Eric. Appreciate you. What's the world without brother Salahuddin? Thank you for coming on the show. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace and blessings to your family, my brother. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. And again, I appreciate all those well wishes from yesterday. Some of y'all had some pretty cruel jokes, but it's all right. I take cruel jokes. I deserve it. All right. Thank you, Bilal. Appreciate you. And what's the show without Johnny L. Thomas, my little brother, JT? What's going on? I appreciate you and Yolanda. And JT had the audacity to call me up at 10 o'clock last night, knowing his brother was asleep, talking about you asleep, huh? I was like, absolutely. But I appreciate you, brother. Much love. And feel free to jump in on this because this is some stuff that we talk about. Next up, what's going on? Sister Jasmine Fruits, all the way from the UK. We haven't seen you in a while, but you know what? It doesn't matter. You are family. You are ShOUt Show royalty, sister. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the team. We haven't seen you in a while. We hope that you're doing well and Pop is doing well and your babies are doing well. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope things are working out over there. We heard that the virus, the Omicron virus, is going kind of crazy over in the UK. So watch your health. Guard your health. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Sister Fruits. And we got Mama Son. What's going on, Mom? Appreciate you coming on the show. Mama Son, I know I railed against Red Lobster yesterday. I just want you to know from the bottom of my heart, I meant every word. No, I did. I appreciate you coming on the show, despite me bashing Red Lobster, that seafood from ShOUt. All right, let's get it rolling. Who we got next? And why like my salon for two about the cottage? This is Satana. What is the shout out show without our consultant producer who makes sure that this thing runs smoothly? I know, we have lights, camera, action, but Sister Satana has stepped up to the plate in numerous ways and different levels to make sure that the quality of the show is something that you want to see and something you want to come back to take part of. Shout out to Sister Satana, who is soldiering through some illness. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Addressing Uncle Tom, Muslims, and snitches. First of all, let me give you what I mean by Uncle Tom, because I put Muslim behind it. Uncle Tom was a slave term back in the day. Now, what an Uncle Tom does, because it's not reserved to say, what the Uncle Tom does is relegate himself above the other people. He might be black. He relegates himself above the other people, the other black people. He sees himself differently. He sees himself closer to the master than he does the people that the master oppresses. And in that space, he fascinates in his mind that he's doing the master's bidding. He's making the master relevant and always something that's constant in the lives of the people who are oppressed. And he fashions that there's something biblical or righteous in doing that. Therefore, if the oppressed interests do not match up to what the master says, the Uncle Tom is the one who jumps in and says, hey, boss, you need to talk to them people out there. You need to look, so-and-so ain't doing so good in the field. He's a snitch. He works on his own selfish self-interest. He begs for the scraps from the master's table and somehow cordons off the fact that the food that the oppressed eat is beneath him. It's the same food. However, he's fashioning in his mind that he's better in this situation. That what the oppressor does to these people, the oppressor couldn't possibly do to him. And if that becomes a reality, he realizes he must lower himself in this situation. Well, brothers and sisters, we have the same thing here in the United States. We have a rash of Uncle Tom Muslims. Let me give you a breakdown of what I'm talking about. Because what needs to be said is to be an Uncle Tom successfully, you have to have an environment that supports the Uncle Tom. So in slave time, you had slavery to support the Uncle Tom. In these times, for the Uncle Tom Muslim, we have created a situation and environment by which that Uncle Tom Muslim can continue to operate. Let me begin. You've heard me talk about jazz musicians. You heard me talk about jazz musicians and what their challenges were as artists. Now, what you need to know is they were the first artists to come out of the plantations after the blues guys. The blues was the blues, but jazz was something different. It was hip. It was tied into liberation thoughts. And in the 50s, and jazz was tied into travel, meaning black men and black women got to go around the country and see how they were valued outside of the United States. And they were shocked that the French loved them, that the British loved them, that the Germans loved them, but they got no love back home. And when they came back, it became a filibuster, if you will, for white people to begin to talk about these new Negroes who came back with new ideas about how they should be viewed and how they should be free and how they had rights. That was a big part of the jazz movement. And if you remember from an episode I did about one of my favorite singers, Billie Holiday, that Billie Holiday was tortured. She was crucified because Billie Holiday represented something that the government couldn't have. She represented something that the art form and the movement and needs of people came together in a massive way. And not just a massive way, but in a mainstream way, where white people would listen to things like Strange Fruit and begin to equate that with what was going on down south. And so they made Billie Holiday a poster child for heroin addiction, and somehow all black music, all black art, it was called race music or race art, meant to make sure that you white people shouldn't be listening to that, because if you look at the title, it's meant to demean the art form. Why is this important? Because if you go and flash forward after the Voting Rights Act and things like that, in the 70s, you had the Black Panthers. And they had a thing, the Black Panthers, whereby they developed fellowships. And it came after SNCC and, the Civil Rights Movement, NAACP. It was franchises of young black people getting together, talking about what they needed, not just nationally, but also regionally and locally. Something that, of course, couldn't stand. And so you had the people who were like J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI, who took all kind of emphasis and effort to make sure that those things were put down. There would be no Black Messiah. So there was no more King. There was no more Malcolm. There's no more Elijah Muhammad. There's no more Medgar Evers. There was no more. What did we learn? What did we learn from COINTELPRO? I'm going to say this. I don't want to come across wrong, but a lot of my brothers and sisters from India and Pakistan and Saudi Arabia and places like that, in Turkey, when they taught you American history, they didn't tell you about that. When you apply for your citizenship, that wasn't a part of American history. They left it out. And they left it out with purpose and with cause, because it's not meant for you to believe that somehow when you're oppressed, you have the wherewithal, outside of course, civil rights, the wherewithal to stand up. Why is this important, brothers and sisters? I'm going to tell you. Just recently, one of our Muslim advocacy groups, CAIR-Ohio, had a snitch, had a Muslim Uncle Tom, Roman Iqbal. I said his name, Roman Iqbal. Let me say his name again, Roman Iqbal. One more time, Roman Iqbal. I'm going to say it one time, Roman Iqbal, who is the executive director of CAIR-Ohio, was found, brothers and sisters, over a large period of years to be giving out information, data, statistics, fundraising information. They probably got me on a couple of pictures, to a known established anti-Muslim organization. A known anti-Muslim organization. And the result of this is, of course, he got fired. But my question is, how do we deal with this snitch? How do we deal with this Uncle Tom Muslim? They fired him, but what else? You fired him, but you don't know what he did. We're not clear about the damage that this man instilled in your corporation, in your advocacy efforts. Let me tell you something about COINTELPRO and what happened with this. COINTELPRO, brothers and sisters, was meant as a first and secondary effort to crush the idea that Black people had agency here in the United States. Despite the Voting Rights Act, despite Brown versus Educate, all of this stuff, it was to crush the idea that it could happen again, that there could be some surreal uprising of young intellectuals who could draw from Malcolm and Elijah and Martin and Medgar and Thurgood Marshall and establish an institution and foundation that would be, in many ways, I want to say, it could be compromised by the old tricks. I said earlier that America, to me, at a young age, was a country of a lot of people who were really, really miserable. And I'm saying as a young guy. I mean, I'm saying when I say young, I'm talking about 4, 5, 6 years. So look at people, particularly white people, and go, they are absolutely miserable. I hadn't even reached puberty yet. I wasn't even mature, but you could see it and you could feel it when they looked at you. I said, that's a miserable person. We now have a situation and scenario, brothers and sisters, where the game has changed. For the African American Muslim and the immigrant Muslim, we find ourselves in a space whereby we can both be co-opted, whereby now the mood, if you will, or the framing of African American Muslim and immigrant Muslim existence in the United States is tied to terrorism, and it's going back to terrorism. You know why? Because we're watching terrorism on TV and nobody's going to jail. I guarantee in the next 6 months, going into the midterm elections, there'll be a ramping up of being up on the religion of Islam, but doing it through the mouth and the efforts of other Muslims. That was important about COINTELPRO. It's just like if you watch The Wire. The Wire doesn't work, and guess what? It doesn't work unless the police officers have what? A confidential informant. You can't take down CAIR without what? A confidential informant. You would think after all these years, we would have something set up where we knew who the informant was, and we could flip the informant. We could feed the informant poor information and leverage the informant to our benefit. But we don't do that. Because somehow, some way, we're still holding true to this idea that America loves us. No, America loves us when we do what America tells us to do. I'm going to bring up a video. I want you guys to watch it. Pay close attention. Santana, can you roll it up?
Their plan is they're going to create 2 backpacks of bombs, and then they have 2 Stinger anti-aircraft missiles. Hussein was going to provide all the materials and the money, whatever they wanted.
Automatically, I knew this whole thing was manufactured.
This is a small city just soaking and drowning in poverty. Somebody offers you a large chunk of change, what do we got to do?
This operation was specifically designed to turn them into terrorists.
You read what you want to read. You believe what you want to believe. I know my child.
This is not a game. This is real life. How could you prey on your own American people?
Once you see something like that, you can't unsee it.
Bring that up, and the reason why I bring it up, brothers and sisters, is because I don't know if you know where Newburgh, New York is. It's south of Poughkeepsie, New York, north of New York City. I've been through there before, and the only reason I would stop there is to get gas and keep going. We're talking about destitute people. Destitute people. And this is a situation whereby a Muslim or someone posing as a Muslim comes to them and go, I have a great idea. And none of this program, none of his things about being terrorists and blowing, nothing works until he offers them money. The idea that for $250,000 to do it. I know a lot of people that do things for $250 when they're desperate. But my point of the matter is, this is an Uncle Tom snitch. There are plenty of that man around this country. There are plenty of that attitude in that country. I was saying, Sister Satana, I said we have a snitch mentality in the entertainment business as is applicable to Muslims. We have people who are not part of our community will go to a white entity. I won't say a white entity. I'll say a Hollywood entity and proclaim these things as being true, that this is the way we are. And they'll sit in a writer's room and they will write this story out, this narrative, and they will get it greenlit, put it on TV, and all of the rest of us stand around going, that never happened. That's not true. Where's that coming from? Life imitates art. that you can take the core of something that's truthful and twist it and contort it and make it be anything other than the truth if you have the right environment. Let me tell y'all something about a snitch too. Every snitch I've ever known has always been incentivized. Let me explain this. Always been incentivized. Two ways. They're incentivized in terms of what they get out of the deal, but the wicked part is what they're taking away from this core over here. See, a snitch will get money, but understanding that to get that money or to get that position or to get that break on a sentence, he must do something that's against the best interest of somebody else. And you have to sit here and wonder, is that person being truthful, being honest? If you tell the truth about a situation, so I get it, I understand. But if you look, and here's the deal about this, if you look to tell on that situation to further advance yourself and your interests, there's something that's fundamentally wrong. And we're standing here, right here in 2021, hoping, brothers and sisters, hoping that people are telling the truth about what we do, what we say, the words that come out of our mouth. We're hoping that it's being interpreted that way. CAIR-Ohio. I'd love to give Brother Roman Iqbal on my show. Let's say his name again, Roman Iqbal. You know why? Because you got to out a snitch when a snitch is a snitch. I hope when you see him in the grocery store, right after you give salams, because that's what we're supposed to do as Muslims, you go, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, snitch! Alhamdulillah, snitch! Because, brothers and sisters, we're letting people off too easy. We're letting people off too easy. We made it an environment where people can do these things. And they can enter and leave with impunity. I'm now seeing people come into the Muslim space the way they came into the African-American space and steal parts of our culture, mimic parts of our lifestyle, co-opt some of our ideas and aspirations as Muslims and prophetic tradition and take it other places and present it as something that is uniquely inorganic and definitely something of their own imagination and creation. I'm telling you, folks, we are in a time of crisis. And I say this, brothers and sisters, not because Roman Iqbal dimed out CAIR-Ohio. He had been working there since, 2006, 2005? How much information did you give him? Videotapes, audio tapes, memorandums. CAIR says they have an investigation. I'm old school. I'm sorry, Roman. You're fired, but your severance check is behind the building, and I myself and the other 20 brothers would love to give it to you. But we can't do that. Why? Because we're trying to keep Massa happy. So listen, we have some comments. You want to throw some of those up there, Sister Satana, before we close out? Time served or money. Okay, I appreciate it. And said, I wonder what they had on them. You know, that is so interesting. You know, the leverage they use on snitches is interesting, but I don't know, and they won't tell us. That's the other thing that's frustrating about this situation, because it's a PR disaster. It's a PR disaster. I'm like, if I'm old school, I'm like, yo, man, your shop is leaky. Your shop is very leaky. And I'm like, the fact that national headquarters had to bring it to the regional office makes it even scarier, brothers and sisters. But, you know, we wish them the best, and we hope that those leaks are sealed up, and we hope that all you Uncle Tom Muslims and snitches come to the reality and the realization that whatever you're doing, it ain't gonna work out. You know why? It's not gonna work out. I'm not biblical. I'm not talking prophecy. It just don't work out, because what happens is your environments have to change. You can't stay in those environments. You got to move around. And every once in a while, people like myself, old heads, will say, "Oh, that's a boy from over there." And we know what you did. and we'll give you the gold shoulder if you're lucky. All right, let's get to our end of our show. Sister Tana, what we got here? We want to give a shout out, of course, to www.befinancialindependent.com. Again, that's www.befinancialindependent.com. You can call 202-3. I'm sorry, my eyes are bad. There you go. 202-508-3780. Again, that's 202-508-3780. Check it out if you're interested in finance. Next up, if you're interested in getting quality Islamic graduate education, brothers and sisters, you got to check out Bayan Islamic Graduate School, offering programs in Islamic education, Islamic leadership, Islamic studies, one of the premier programs for Muslim Masters of Divinity with a focus on Muslim chaplaincy. You got to check it out. Go to bayan.org. Again, that's bayanonline.org. Sorry, that's bayanonline.org. Check them out. And, of course, we'll give a shout out to Brother Kurt. He's under the weather. He was our DP director for the ShOUt for Don't Get the COVID. So we're a little delayed with that. We're going to give a shout out to Brother Kurt. And shout out to Convenient Urgent Care that is earning their money right now. Convenient Urgent Care. If you are sick, go to www.convenienturgent.com. Again, that's www.convenienturgent.com. Get your free COVID test. Don't wait. Get your free COVID test. Make sure that you and your family are protected. Don't wait. All right, brothers and sisters, that is it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. You know, we're in that space. We got one more show for the holidays. If people celebrate the holidays, God bless you. Have a good time. It's great family time. Listen, this is The Preach. I appreciate you, all you Muslim Uncle Toms, and all you snitches. Got my eyes on you. That's my show. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm out this way. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Well, team, we've come to the end of yet another show. And I have to say I had a good time, and I hope that you had a good time as well. Listen, at this part of the show, we have no more show. I could literally sing a song saying we have no more show. However, to spare all of us that embarrassment and chaos, I'm just going to say, please join us tomorrow here on the ShOUt Show, Monday through Thursdays, and every first Saturday, we do our Saturday Spotlight. Here we are again, 5 to 5:30 on the Central Time. And of course, we're going to do our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock p.m. And of course, that would be 6 o'clock on the West Coast. So, time for you to go, because it's time for me to go. I think I will do that song. Thank you for coming to the show. Thank you for coming to the show. That's all the lyrics I wrote. But you get the idea. See you tomorrow. Assalamu alaikum. ShOUt.